Wanna make money, wanna make money, wanna make money, wanna make money. Hi guys, good evening. How are you? Thank you for tuning into my video. Okay, so here I am on the Yahoo Finance page, and here is a stock, an equity, which is traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange. It's called Hammond Power Solutions. It's been a pretty incredible stock over the last year, trading at $20, and now it's trading at $80. This company is in the field of electrical engineering, but they are also a manufacturing plant which produces dry cell transformers. That's interesting. It's located in Guelph, Ontario. So that's neat. And why am I looking at this? Well, if you look at a stock, it doesn't have to be on the Canadian Stock Exchange or the TSX. But when you go to the stock, you can look at the statistics, and these are based on accounting ratios, and there's so much data, however you say that, on the stock. And how do you make sense of all this information? Well, there's a few key metrics when looking at a stock, particularly, say, the market cap, taking all the outstanding shares that are currently available and then multiplying that by the current trading price. That should give you the market cap of all of the outstanding shares that are currently available for trading on the market as of the last trading day, which was Friday. So that's a neat stat. And then there's the price to earnings ratio, which takes the current stock price and divides it by the earnings per share. So anyway, the PE ratio, you take the price of the stock, the current trading price, and you divide it by the earnings per share. Now, the earnings per share is also something that has to be calculated, and it's based upon the gross profit divided by the total outstanding shares, and that will give the earnings per share. And then you take the current stock price and divide that by the earnings per share. And this is really the apples to oranges comparison when it comes to stocks. Hopefully I've explained that correctly. And there's all kinds of other interesting stats. And even for me, they're a little tricky to comprehend, some of them, because they can have a very involved calculation process. Like, here's basically earnings, but it takes a factor of other things into consideration, like taxes, debt, amortization, things like that. And there's much that can be said about each one of these stats. So I thought, how neat would it be to write a software program that could start taking some of this data and giving it a score, so then you can compare one stock to another. Now, if you're wondering, I don't love the stock market, but investing is considered a way of being successful in the future. So I suppose it's something I've gotten involved in over the last couple years or so. But my real passion would be electronics, microcontrollers, and things like that. But anyway, you could do the same type of thing if you compared athletes and yearly statistics on baseball, basketball, football, hockey. You could do the same type of thing. I'm just using the stock market as a basis for comparison. And I would love to get more involved. There was a popular book written by an author, and the website is Guru Focus. Here's a screenshot of it here, and what this site really does when you get diving into it is it's statistical analysis of different stocks, and somebody's gone through the process of number crunching and all that. So I'm attempting to do a very basic form of analysis for these stocks, and I'm using Arduino. So here's a nice piece of code here. I did not write it. I used ChatGPT to come up with this. Much can be said about ChatGPT if you're not familiar with it already, and I won't go into explaining that, but it's easy to use and you can log in with a Google account. So I asked it to create an Arduino code for some stock metrics, and wow, it was able to do that. So here's something that might take you a day or even a week, depending on your coding skills and statistical knowledge of the stock market. This might take you a long time and a lot of learning to get to the point to writing all of this. And even if you do have the ability to do this, this might even be a more efficient coding of what you're trying to do. So anyway, I'm just going through the process of this, and I'll read this out loud. This video is not going to be extensive and exhaustive and exploring all the different possibilities of crunching different stock metrics. It's just going to be very basic. And I actually plan on developing this further on my own, so it's my own area of interest right now. Okay, so I asked a question to ChatGPT, and I will read it aloud. Please write me a program in C language to evaluate 3 different metrics related to a publicly traded stock. I already have the PE ratio, debt to equity ratio, and the profit margin stats. I do not need to calculate them. Please allow the program to accept these as input values. Have the program do nothing until I input the data. Please write the program for Arduino. Please create a point system, a score, for each of the metrics. This is to arrive at an overall stock score. Have it ask me for the input of each metric using the serial monitor. I came up with this kind of through trial and error, so I didn't just develop this all in one sitting. I had to think it through a little bit. What was happening originally when I was asking ChatGPT to calculate some stock statistics or metrics is it was actually going to the extent of calculating the PE ratio, the debt to equity ratio, which is great that it can do that. But the thing is, I already have these stats available, so I don't need to calculate the trailing PE because I already have it here and I know what it is. Same with the profit margin and the profit. So I just want to take the already calculated stats and do something interesting with them and come up with an overall score for the stock. And here is what ChatGPT came up with. It says, certainly, here's an Arduino program written in C that prompts the user to input PE ratio, debt to equity ratio, and profit margin for a publicly traded stock using the serial monitor of the Arduino IDE. The program then calculates scores for each metric and provides an overall stock score. Here's the code. I copied it already, and it kind of summarizes things at the end. This program uses the serial monitor to interact with the user, waits for the user to input metrics, and then calculates scores based on predefined thresholds. The individual scores and overall stock scores are displayed in the serial monitor, adjust the scoring thresholds, and customize the program according to your specific criteria. Alright, so even if you can't grasp everything of what I just said, although I'm no genius, it wasn't that complicated, you could work this problem through and come up with something yourself. So here I have the Arduino IDE open, and I've copied and pasted that very same code. The only thing I'd like to mention is that when using this code, when you verify it and upload it onto your Arduino, if you're using the serial monitor, without really explaining it in detail, make sure that you have no line ending selected on your serial monitor. If you don't have it set up that way, for some reason, and without really getting into the explanation of why, it would tend to skip over some of the question prompts that it has, and the code was basically buggy. And this is a common problem. Here is an excellent video basically explaining how to read numbers from the serial monitor, and it covers much of the code that I'm using today. And one of the things it says here, as a note to all of the 231,000 viewers that have viewed this video, it says, guys, if you are having trouble, make sure you have your serial monitor set to no line ending. Otherwise, you can get unpredictable results. And I spent about an hour or more troubleshooting that one because I didn't have no line ending selected. And yeah, that's a separate tangent you could look into as to why that's important, but to save you the trouble, no line ending. Another great thing about this code for the Arduino is that it does not make use of any of the GPIO pins. I'm not setting up any discrete components for circuits, hooking them up to the Arduino. I'm not even using sensors, nothing. I'm just using the Arduino as a calculator. It's, yeah. Now, if you got creative, you could hook up an LCD screen or even a keypad, and you could create a mobile device that didn't even require the serial monitor. So there's potential that way. But that would be a pretty big project once you started adding all of those devices. So I'll just go through the serial monitor. So enter the PE ratio. Well, the current stock price, the current stock here has a trailing PE, which effectively is the trailing 12 months. This is a future prediction, so this isn't. This is derived by what analysts think the future price to earnings ratio will be. So it's a prediction, and they're not always very accurate. If the forward PE is lower than the current trailing 12 months PE, it means that there's an expectation of future earnings from the company. So if you're investing in this company, a lower prediction of a future forward PE is probably a good thing. But anyway, that's getting off on a different tangent. So the current trailing PE here is 15.54 of this particular stock. So here we are here. These numbers are set up as floats. I don't know how well it's going to take a decimal number, but okay, took it. Enter the debt to equity ratio. Well, it's a percentage. The current debt to equity ratio is 14.88. So paste that in here. And enter the profit margin. Profitability. I don't know whether this is the trailing 12 months or the last quarter, the most recent quarter. Maybe I should ask ChatGPT for some clarification, but I really don't know. But there's the current profit margin. Paste, send. All right. So individual score, PE ratio score equals 1. Debt to equity ratio score equals 1. Profit margin score equals 1. Well, what does that mean? Well, it's actually come up with a rating of all the values I entered, and it grades them. And I haven't set the parameters of the grading system. And more specifically, the way ChatGPT has set up this code is it's created thresholds of the different stats. So here's the float PE threshold low equals 10. PE threshold medium is 15. And it factors in these thresholds into the calculation of whether it's between these ranges, and then if the PE ratio is less than the PE threshold low, then it gives it a PE score of 3. Else, if the PE ratio is less than the PE threshold medium, the PE score equals 2. Else, the PE score equals 1. So this has to be adjusted as to make sense out of the stats I'm giving the program. But it basically is going to give an overall score for the whole stock based on these 3 metrics, and the score is 3. So what does 3 mean? Well, 3 is meaningless unless I actually compare this company to another company. And hopefully I guess the company with the bigger number might be the better investment. So this is just a starting point. I had some other ideas. So like, a company will often have a certain amount of cash sitting in the bank. That's a good thing. If it has no cash, well, it's probably in debt. But anyway, it has a certain amount of cash, it has a certain amount of debt. If you subtract the difference, take 44 and subtract 32, well, that should offset the debt, and it'll give you the amount of cash they would hold if they paid off their debt. That's almost like an equity type of calculation on the balance sheet. Like, that would give the answer to how much equity they have in their cash surplus. But then this cash might actually be representative of debt they've applied for. So anyway, so a company holds $44 million in cash. Well, that doesn't really mean anything until we actually know how much the total value of the company is to begin with. And the enterprise value strips down the company, and it kind of looks at the non-cash value of the business. When you take away the cash, and you take away, it's basically the liquidation value of the business if you sold it today and settled all the debts and took away the cash. This is the value of the business. And I guess it's probably measured according to historical book value of what assets are worth. But that's getting into a different discussion. But my point is that, maybe you could come up with a calculation which took the cash, or perhaps the cash minus the debt, and then divided that by the enterprise value. It would make sense of how much cash there is relative to the value of the whole business. And then you would have a percentage value, and once you have a percentage value, you can compare one company to another as far as the cash position in a company. So the thing is, you could take these stats, create a math formula that would do that, and it would spit out a number. percentage, perhaps, you could compare that from one company to another. And that would take a lot of subroutines. So there's a lot of room for development of a code like that. All right, the next thing I'm going to do here is to read this code line by line. And I won't try to explain it, I'll just read it as it's written. It will give some idea as to how ChatGPT will create code for you. And so that might be boring, so you can tune out now if it is, but I'm going to go through the process of reading this all out verbatim. Alright, this is new to me here. Number sign include Arduino.h. I'm not used to putting that at the top of my code. And then here, I'm used to putting global variables in, but it hasn't done that here. Let's put them down in the void loop. I guess I could copy this and paste it up at the top here. Anyway, void setup. It sets up the serial monitor, serial.begin, or the serial communication, 9600, initialize serial communication, void loop, input metrics. It chooses float as the number type, variable type, and then it just lists them. PE ratio, debt to equity ratio, profit margin, prompt user for input using serial monitor, serial.println, enter the PE ratio, while not serial.available, and then it's waiting for user input. Now there's a different way to write this. Here's just a random tutorial I found online. You could write instead while serial.available equals 0. And in fact, this may be the more common way of writing that. But according to some quick Google searches I've done, it's the equivalent of this not serial.available. And I haven't even thought through what that all means exactly. But it basically will, I have some coding skills, but I don't know the depth of why it's written this way. That's waiting for user input. And then it goes to the next piece of data value that the program is looking for. And, PE ratio equals serial.parseFloat. So it's taking this variable, and it's assigning it a value based on the serial monitor, and it's assigning that value as a float. And this is already this variable is already designated as a float. If this was an integer, it would be parseInt. So it's assigning the PE ratio variable the value that the user put in here. And it does the same thing for the debt to equity ratio, the profit margin. Now, depending on what you desire, you could have more than 3 metrics. You could have perhaps 15 metrics of a stock, a publicly traded stock. And I suppose it's only limited to the amount of storage in the Arduino's program memory, which I'm reading at the bottom is 32,000 bytes. Okay, so then it takes the input for the PE ratio, the debt to equity ratio, the profit margin. And then next, okay, it's just assigning the profit margin its parsed value. And now this is a ChatGPT decision. It's created thresholds, which was explained at the beginning. So it says define scoring thresholds, and it gives 2 different thresholds for each metric that I'm using. It's giving a low and a medium. But in fact, when it does an if-else type of comparison, would that be a Boolean comparison? I don't know. A logical comparison, it's actually adding a 3rd threshold. So if it's not low, it's not medium, if else, it gives it another score, even below the low and the medium values. So even though there's 2 different threshold values for each of the stock metrics, it actually ends up calculating kind of like 3 different scores based upon these threshold values here. And I guess this can be tweaked and modified according to your tastes and interests. But I will read, define scoring thresholds, float, PE threshold low equals 10, float PE threshold medium equals 15. And then it does it for the debt to equity ratio threshold. It gives it a low and a medium, and it does it with the profit margin, a high and a medium threshold. Initialize scores. So int, it creates a variable here, PE score equals 0. So it's just kind of clearing, it's setting up a variable for each of the scores, and it's clearing them all at 0. And here now, kind of, I guess we're getting into subroutines. I know that's not the word that Arduino C language tends to use, but anyway, yeah, separate functions, I guess that's the word. So now it's going to go through the scoring process. And I'll just go through one of these anyway. If PE ratio is less than the PE threshold low, which was defined up here, then it'll give it a 3. Because without really going into detail, when you have a PE ratio, price to earnings ratio, the lower the better. It means a company is undervalued. It means the stock price is undervalued when the PE ratio is really low. So the lower the PE ratio, the better. It's like a score in golf. The lower the value, the better. It means the lower the trading price compared to the earnings per share of the company. So the lower the better. So if you have the low threshold for a PE score, it gives it a 3. That's the best score it could get. If it's not really that low, it's more of a medium. And the threshold for medium was 15. It gives it a 2. I guess if it's higher than that, it gives it a score of 1. And debt to equity ratio, well, I think the lower the value as well is better. And profit margin, you probably would want a higher profit margin. Profit margin calculation is when you take the profit of the company and divide that by the revenue. So what percentage of the revenue is profit? And that's how you calculate the profit margin. So the higher the profit margin, the better. So this might look a little different here. I'll just read this one verbatim. So scoring for the profit margin. If the profit margin is greater, so unlike the previous 2 examples which has a less than sign, if the profit margin is greater than the profit margin threshold high, the profit margin score equals 3. And what are the thresholds for the profit margin? I'm just learning this now. Profit margin threshold, like I guess between 10 and 15 is a threshold there. 10 is a little bit medium, and then below 10 would be kind of low. which actually makes sense, having looked at a lot of stock sheets. And I've actually done a study myself, just independently on my own in my free time, as to what good numbers are, as to PE ratio, debt to equity, profit margin, and many other stats. I looked at what the S&P 500 averages. So why did I just mention that? That independently on my own, I investigated as to what good round numbers are for PE, debt to equity, and profit margin, and other stats. Why did I just mention that? Well, it looks like ChatGPT, which developed this code, may have had some good average numbers for these as well, based on the S&P 500 average numbers for these. Because it kind of makes sense. It knew where to put the thresholds for each of these stats. That's neat that ChatGPT kind of had some insight into that, and it incorporated that knowledge into this code. Well, that's pretty wild and fascinating that it was able to do that. So the scoring for the profit margin, if the profit margin is greater than the profit margin threshold high, the profit margin equals 3. Higher the number, the better. Else, if the profit margin is greater than the profit margin threshold medium, then the profit margin score is a 2. Else, if the profit margin score is, I guess, even below this medium threshold, which I guess is set at 10, so if the profit margin is less than 10%, then it gives it a profit margin score of 1. And I suppose you could expand on this even more. You would probably have to add some more thresholds and adjust the values accordingly. And maybe a few more if and else if statements you could add as well. And then calculate overall stock score. And so it creates another, they got global and local variables. So you got global variables, local variables. I suppose this is a local variable? Not sure. Actually, I'm not sure, because it's not. Is this a separate function? Not sure. Well, that's up to the user. If you're watching, leave a comment below. Let me know. Is this a local or global variable? I gotta refresh my study. I should know that. Anyway, display individual scores and overall scores. So it'll serial print line individual scores. I guess it'll just write that on the screen. Serial print PE ratio score, and then serial print a line PE score, serial print debt to equity ratio score, serial print LN debt to equity score, serial print profit margin score, serial.print LN profit margin score, serial.print overall score, which is really what I wanted, and serial print LN overall score. Wait for next input. Haven't thought this one through yet. I guess this is why do we have a delay in here? Where does this curly brace match up with? Got it hooked. I guess it aligns with this one here. Yeah, how does this delay interact? I guess after it's all calculated and displayed, then it'll wait for 5 seconds, at which point it probably goes back up to the void loop and starts prompting the user once again for the PE ratio and all the different metrics. So, as much as it might seem like I'm teaching you, the viewer, in fact, I'm not doing that. I'm teaching myself. I'm teaching myself right now how to do this. I'm not an expert, and I'll never tell you I am. There's probably people who do coding daily who have way better insight or could just bang out the keys and come up with this on their own. I can't. Not that good yet. So thank you for watching. This is currently my area of interest, and given my free time and availability, I'll probably be trying to develop more and more advanced ways of measuring stuff.